Hey guys, welcome to our channel.
Story 1. Karen against everyone. I was having one of those long, exhausting workdays, wearing my bronze 5.11 tactical pants, my service belt, and a thigh holster with my sidearm. To complete the look, I wore a green polo and a ballistic vest with giant reflective letters that said, security. I was starving and didn't want gas station food. Taco Bell, the only decent option nearby, was closed. So, I decided to stop at Walmart to grab a sandwich. As I walked through the store, heading toward the deli, a couple approached me. The woman, whom I mentally dubbed Karen, and her husband looked irritated. Before I could react, Karen demanded that I check in the back of the store for a specific shelf she wanted. I stood there, staring at them in disbelief. Seriously, I thought, I'm clearly dressed as security, not a Walmart employee, but instead of explaining this, I just walked away, leaving them there, confused and probably even more irritated. After grabbing my sandwich, I went to the front of the store to pay, and there they were, Karen and her husband, yelling at the poor customer service manager, who clearly had no idea what was happening. Karen's husband spotted me, and as if it were a signal, he came straight toward me, invading my personal space and starting to yell at me. Remember, I was carrying a can of OC spray but no taser. At this point, the guy caught the attention of the store's unarmed security guard, Paolo, who came to see what was going on. Before anyone could say anything else, I told Paolo to call the police. Karen's husband heard this and, as if he'd seen a ghost, turned and bolted out of the store. Meanwhile, Karen continued screaming about the terrible customer service. After paying for my food, I called my boss. Boss, I'm gonna need to stay off all sites for a while. You won't believe what just happened. I quickly explained the situation, still trying to process everything. The police arrived about 2 minutes after the call. The store security had informed them that a man was yelling at an armed security guard, and they feared the situation could escalate into something more serious. When the officers entered the store, the tension was palpable. Karen was still shouting about the awful customer service while her husband had disappeared. I explained to the officers what had happened, and they quickly took control of the situation. A few weeks later, I was on duty at one of our problematic sites which had been robbed 4 times under our watch. We weren't incompetent. The thieves always struck when we were off duty. It was around 1 a.m., and I was in my car, lights and engine off, watching the location where the break-ins had occurred. I was sitting in the car, observing the silence of the night, with the engine and lights off, keeping an eye on the area where the break-ins happened. Suddenly, who do I see lurking around the cars? Karen and her husband. The first thing I did was call my boss. Boss, you won't believe who I'm seeing here. Yes, Karen and her husband. He told me to call the police and get them out of the lot. I called the sheriff's office, which was only 4 minutes away, while the police were about 20 minutes out. When the deputy arrived, I slid over to the side of the lot and told him the whole story from weeks ago. We made our approach, and upon initial contact, I told them I remembered them and hoped they had been well since the last time. I firmly told them that they could not be in the lot after hours and needed to leave. Karen turned around, furious, and started shouting. Her husband, clearly agitated, began marching toward me. At that moment, my hand instinctively went to my holster, recalling my days as a corrections officer, ready to act. The deputy appeared at my side with a taser in hand, pointing it at Karen's husband's chest. She screamed and backed away as soon as the deputy gave commands. After all, I was just a security guard, but he was a real law enforcement officer. Karen's husband saw that he was about to be tasered and then complied. The two were taken to jail that night for misdemeanor charges. And no, they weren't the thieves from the previous robberies. They were just trying to look at the cars without a salesperson hounding them. They were just troublemakers. The real thieves were caught a month later when they stole a Porsche that had a GPS tracker. So that's it. A night I didn't expect, ending with justice served and a lesson learned. As for Karen, I sincerely hope she's having a better day.
Story 2, Unexpected Twist. Last year, during the Girl Scouts cookie sale season, I had an experience I will never forget. As a dedicated scout, my mom and I set up our booth at the entrance of the Preco Bill supermarket. The sun was shining brightly, and there I was, in my immaculate uniform, full of enthusiasm and ready to win over new customers. Hello. Would you like to buy a box of Girl Scout cookies? I repeated this phrase with a smile on my face to every person who passed by. Everything was going well, sales were flowing, and I felt proud of my work. Suddenly, a man walked into the supermarket. He seemed rushed, but I didn't hesitate. With my best smile, I asked, "Hello, sir. Would you like to buy some cookies?" To my surprise, he stopped, looked directly at me, and, in a rude tone, replied, "Go screw yourself," before rushing out. I stood there frozen for a moment, not knowing how to react. I looked at my mom, who was just as shocked as I was. But instead of being upset, we started laughing at the situation. It was so absurd that we couldn't take it seriously. Just another story to tell, I thought, as I went back to calling the next customers with the same enthusiasm as before. This experience taught me that even in the most unexpected and unpleasant situations, we can find something to laugh about and move on. After all, life is full of surprises, and each one makes us stronger and more resilient. Some time later, while I was still at the entrance of the Preco-Bilam supermarket, the same man returned. This time, he seemed different, a little embarrassed. He slowly approached me, and I was curious to know what he would say. "I'm sorry for cursing at you earlier," he said, with a tone of regret in his voice. "I thought you worked here. Someone told me you're a Girl Scout." He then handed me $5 and bought a box of cookies before leaving again, this time with a shy smile on his face. It was quite a funny and confusing situation. Later, I found out that the man had been caught shoplifting at Safeway, which explained his initial hostility. He probably thought I was a supermarket employee and was afraid of being reported. This experience taught me that sometimes people react in unexpected ways for reasons we don't know. And even in the strangest situations, there is always a lesson to be learned. After all, life is full of surprises, and each one makes us stronger and more resilient.
Story 3, A Very Confusing Lunch. Today was one of those days when I just wanted to relax and enjoy a nice lunch with my friend Lucas. We decided to meet at our favorite restaurant, a place we knew well. The waiters always wore white shirts and jeans, and coincidentally, I was wearing a light gray shirt and Calvin Klein jeans. As soon as we sat down, I realized I urgently needed to use the restroom. I asked Lucas to order me the deluxe burger combo with a Coke. He agreed, and I quickly headed to the bathroom. When I came out, I started walking back to the table but was interrupted by a demanding female voice. I kept walking, thinking she was talking to someone at a nearby table. Suddenly, I felt quick taps on my shoulder. I turned around to find a woman with a stern expression, whom I'll call Deborah, standing next to her husband, whom I'll call Paolo. "Excuse me?" I asked, confused. "Can I place my order?" "It's getting busy, and I don't know where my waiter is," Deborah said impatiently. "I'm not your waiter," I replied, trying to be polite. "You obviously are a waiter." "Look at your clothes," she shot back, pointing at my shirt and jeans. I understood the misunderstanding but tried to explain again. "I may look like one of the waiters, but I'm not a waiter." Deborah wouldn't accept my response and, irritated, pulled my shirt hard. "I want you to take my order. I'm hungry, and I want my food now." "I already told you I'm not your waiter," I said, trying to back away. But she yanked me again, causing me to lose my balance and fall to the floor. Deborah fell with me, and the situation got even more chaotic. "How dare you push me? I want to speak to your manager," Deborah shouted furiously. "Deborah, maybe you should calm down. He doesn't seem like a waiter," Paolo tried to intervene. "Shut up, Paolo. I'm trying to place our order," she retorted, completely ignoring him. At that moment, people around us started noticing the commotion and watching. Lucas, my friend, was also observing everything from a distance. Deborah then noticed my sketchbook in my back pocket and pulled it out, starting to flip through it. "Why aren't there any orders from other people in here? And why are there drawings?" she asked, as if it were something incredibly suspicious. "That's a sketchbook, not an order pad," I explained, trying to stay calm. "I'm going to report you to the manager for not taking orders and for drawing instead." "I'll get you fired," she said, a devilish smile on her face. Deborah started walking toward another waiter in the room, but Lucas stood up and went to her. "Give back the sketchbook." "It's his, not yours," Lucas said firmly. Lucas knew how much that sketchbook meant to me. He took the sketchbook from Deborah's hands and handed it back to me. Shortly after, another waiter who had seen the whole scene called the manager. The manager arrived and began talking to Deborah while Lucas and I seized the opportunity to leave the restaurant. A few hours later, the manager contacted me. He was an old school friend and told me that Deborah was no longer welcome at the restaurant.
There are invisible scars that shape lives. Abuse steals your peace, but not your strength. Breaking the Cycle of Abuse is an interactive guide where you'll find powerful tools to identify the signs of abuse, Understand the dynamics of violence. Find shelter and legal and psychological support. Plan a safe exit from a harmful environment. Overcome trauma and rebuild your self-esteem. Start your journey of healing and transformation now for just $9.60.
At the restaurant. Only then did I realize I never got that deluxe burger combo I wanted so much.
Story 4, The Sweet Misunderstanding. 8 years ago, I had an accident that almost cost me my leg. I spent a long time at home, needing several surgeries and a lot of physical therapy to relearn how to walk. But this story isn't about the accident, it's about a peculiar encounter I had in the hospital. I was in the recovery ward, using a walker to get around since lying in bed all the time was driving me crazy. That's when I heard a soft voice calling me, "Could you bring me a glass of water, dear?" I looked around and saw an elderly lady pointing to a pitcher of water that was out of her reach. Sure, it was a bit far for me too, but I didn't even think about calling a nurse. I decided to go over there with my walker. When I got closer to her bed, she finally saw me properly and, to my surprise, began to apologize frantically. "I'm sorry, I thought you were a nurse." I laughed and told her not to worry. I poured the water into a cup and handed it to her. She looked so grateful that, during her next visit, her family came to thank me personally. They even gave me a card and a red velvet cupcake. It was such a sweet gesture that made me feel a little better about the whole situation.
Want more mysteries, twists, and exciting moments? So you can't miss this video. Click now and continue this journey of fascinating stories. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and activate the bell so you don't miss any news. Leave your comments and see you next time.